Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas. Welcome to Inside Connect with Ashok Vyas. And today, this Monday, we have a very special show. We are going to be looking back as well as we will see how we should be looking forward. And for that, we need right focus and how our community leaders as well as members of the community are coping up with COVID-19 situation, where we have come, what we have experienced, and what we can look forward to. I have the pleasure of welcoming two esteemed members of our community. First, I take the opportunity of welcoming Nilima Madanji. Nilima ji, welcome. Namaste. स्वागत है आपका.
Thank you.
She has been very, very active with various community members, helping them navigate through how they can take care of the challenges of various kinds. We'll talk about some of the challenges down the line. I also have the pleasure of welcoming Jagjit Singh ji. Namaste, Jagjit Singh ji. Swagat hai.
Namaskar.
So Jagjit Singh ji today seems to be very close to nature. So we'll talk about how COVID-19 and the lockdown has also helped us be more close to nature, internal also. And I want to begin with Nilima ji, you first. A kind of situation where many people are isolated from each other, like you cannot come to my home for a cup of tea, I cannot come to your home. And those people who are kind of meeting regularly, they are also forced to stay away. Uh, how do you see the psychological impact that this has caused is affecting members of Indian American community in particular?
Well, I would like to begin with a comment that necessity is the mother of invention. Zoom came into our life, and just about everyone and every platform got transferred over to Zoom, whether they were family gatherings, whether they were event gatherings, whether they were informative sessions, whether they were educational sessions, everything came on Zoom. And that became a communicating medium as well as a platform for people to come together, talk, interact, show videos, and much, much more. So I know for a fact that I myself, with other people in the community, we have extensively used Zoom to bring people together for various reasons.
Absolutely. And I think I should not hide the fact that this show is also being recorded on Zoom. Though we are discouraged to make use of Zoom because of some of the challenges which it has caused in terms of some intruders creating nuisance, which many people have experienced, many organizations have also experienced. The Indian government in particular have actually asked everyone to abstain officially, especially for the government work from Zoom. We'll get into that nitty-gritty a little later. But Jagit Singh ji, politically speaking, uh, after Prime Minister Modi's government announced that in India, Zoom is not the correct mode of communicating, uh, there was a press conference organized by Congress party, which was on Zoom. And then, of course, Congress leaders have also been active on social media, and everybody is bound to be, and they should be. So, how do you see the way opposition in India has taken up social media and Zoom, these technical tools to continue their service for people?
Well, just to say that the role of opposition in India has always, after Modi's arrival, has been nothing else but to oppose whatever the government says, which is not a good sign for a thriving democracy, such a large democracy as of India. But all said and done, opposition, this is how they behave. But again, we have to look at what Modi ji has said, something about Atmanirbharta. In keeping that in mind, Indian government has asked 10, 10 crucial uh, people in the digital platform to come up some alternative of Zoom, which is Indian made, and it will be shortly coming in forward. Meanwhile, you have the Google Meet, you have some other, Microsoft has a platform which is, could be widely used without any kind of a security lapse or anything of that kind. So there are options, and Indian IT people are coming up within a few days. That is what I have heard, that within a few days they will be coming up with a different kind of a platform which will be totally Indian and to be used by the world.
So talking about Atmanirbharta, now coming back to America, Nilimaji, you mentioned about the use of technology, and indeed, let us stay with the positive side of Zoom. Indeed, there are some lacunas here and there in everything, but individually speaking, there were occasions when, as has been the case during COVID-19, we lost some of our friends, and some of us lost our family members. So, do you think the meetings, even condolence meetings that were organized on Zoom, it also serves some purpose of bringing a sense of togetherness?
Yes, it does. Just to extend what was just said right now, Zoom is a new application, and there will be similar applications which are going to come up by other carriers and other platforms like Microsoft and others. But privacy issues, security issues, these are paramount, and they are being tightened everywhere. So, all depending on what level you use, and many a times it is what you pay for. So if you're paying for all these additional benefits, then you are very, very secure, because Zoom has had this capability of bringing not just 100, 350, many, many more people together, and also the capability that if you're not able to join, you're in a waiting room and you can come on for a short period of time, and you can leave when you want to. So to your point, that even something like if somebody has passed on, the funeral services were very limited in terms of the number of people who were allowed to go in, because there were restrictions in place. But people have friends and family who are all emotionally moved when somebody passes on, and definitely want to say a few words or want to share their feelings. And I think Zoom has been a very, very good platform, and all kinds of other platforms like Google Hangout, where people group together, people who had not seen each other for a long time were able to see their faces, see their expressions, and virtually talk to each other.
So virtually talking to each other, whatever be the tool that is used, is one side of it. But the more important side is that the need to stay together, to feel a sense of oneness, and to communicate is a psychological and social need. It also gives a sense of strength, and in that context, jumping towards this side, Facebook has also introduced Room. So now you can have meetings within, so that kind of rhymes with Zoom and Room, and there is always room for improvement everywhere. But talking about our community members working to support each other, Jagjeet Singh ji, how do you see the active role that could have been played or is being played? Because there are many people who have been sort of affected on various fronts, be it financial, be it physical, and there are other issues related to immigration. And since you were, or rather, you were active with South Asians for empowerment, and many immigrants are kind of stuck because of various reasons which are obvious. And so, on these lines, what have you been observing?
See, on many fronts, the state government as well as the federal government has come up with so many different programs. Like, for example, people who have become unemployed. The state government is giving them their, unemployment insurance, which is depending on how much you were making. Roughly, for example, if somebody is getting $400 from the unemployment through the Heroes and Cares Act, he's again being supported by $600 a week from the federal government, which is up till July. So, for example, somebody who was getting a salary of say $600 to $700 a week is now getting $1,000 at least for a week through Unemployment and Cares Act. So people are, kind of happy. This is what I have seen. Many people are telling their employers that, we have a happier scene. We are getting more than what we were getting through the paycheck. And so many of them are not even happy to welcoming the thing to come back to work. This is a real stance which is happening. But more than that, slowly and slowly we are improving. Even the restrictions on people gathering, 2 days back, maybe a day back, the governor announced that even in your backyard, if you maintain your social distance, people up to 10 can gather and have a small gathering. So it is a sign of improvement. People are getting back to their normal life slowly and slowly, and we are going to win.
And there are other programs like PPP, where there were loans made available to individuals as well as to organizations at extremely reasonable rates, where there is they have to go through an application and they have to go through specific websites to get advantage of the amount of money that they can get immediately to support either their business or their employees and help them rather than unemploy them, because these are the same people who would come back to work once the restrictions are lifted. And we are right around the corner now. Now, the easing has started. Like you mentioned, the people in groups of 10 have been permitted in many places, in your backyard, outside, as well as in religious places, etc. So slowly and steadily, if people do not let their guard down, they continue to follow guidelines of protection, which is basically wearing masks, staying 6 feet distance, maintaining that distance, and then your own personal hygiene, that you constantly wash your hands and keep a very clean environment around yourself. If these things are followed, then coming back, regrouping, and this relaxation of these restrictions will go on smoothly. If not, then we stand to witness probably a second wave in a bigger or a smaller scale. And depending on how drastic it is, who knows, things might change once again.
So it is very, very important that we observe all these precautions, and that requires right awareness, right focus. And Jagdish Singh ji, I'll bring back the reference of the unemployment insurance. Indeed, you did mention that it is applicable for those who are laid off or those who are not in complete permanent employment. But the question whether this or PPE, do you think our community members need a supportive organization which would proactively work in bringing these kind of informations to the potential beneficiaries, whether it is a small business owner, whether it is someone who got laid off? Because I personally feel that many of us are not as alert to the provisions which the system has to support us.
Well, in these times, you cannot, the only way to disseminate this information is through communicating via emails, via putting, blurs on your website, or through mediums or webinars on Zoom and media like that. But interestingly, the PPE loan through which businesses have gotten loans, like for example, I was yesterday being told that business house like Bloomingdale's, they have got a secured a PPE loan, which is primarily meant that you will not fire your employees, but you will keep them. And that is basically 75% of the loan is meant to continue your payroll. So what they have done is they are asking their employees to sit back at home, and they are getting a paycheck depending on their, whatever their salary is. On an average, $400 a week they are getting sitting at home. So these things are happening. Business houses are aware of those loans and their restrictions and how they have to use it. People have got millions of dollars through, depending on the business house's size and their, turnover, tax, whatever they were filing, depending on that, they have applied for loans. and they are getting it.
Absolutely. And digital media or virtual life has become a part of our experience on day-to-day basis. Many times you, as grandparents, can see your grandsons or daughters only through these
Yeah.
virtual mediums. So they have become integral part of us. And Nilimanji, there is another side. We'll briefly talk about that, which is very important for our community members, and that relates to visits to temples. They indeed play as social cultural centers also. And how, because many people sort of start their day by going to a particular temple, or at least weekly they go there. So how do you see people compensating for the lack of their ability to visit their favorite shrines?
Well, there are a lot of religious groups that gathered together and did chanting or prayers or other kinds of spiritual um, messages which they are used to in their congregation. They got together on Zoom. So this became like a niche because there are people who follow a certain religious path or certain temples or certain churches. Those people gathered in groups of their own community or their own little organization. And yes, there were some services that were being done by just the priest, and the camera was on, and the rest of the people could watch it online, and they could silently say the prayers. And that was a closure that we brought in together for many people. Now that we are opening up, I believe, since still just a small group of people are allowed to go in, there are institutions that are requesting a message or a phone call which tells them who are the small group of people who are going to visit, so they can time them, give something like an appointment, and they can spread people out, which I think is a wonderful measure if you can stick to it until the completely. Our world has changed. Business is not going to be as usual. There is a lot of people who have started working from home, and the laptop is your best friend now.
So laptop is your best friend, or mobile phone is your best friend. But at the end of the day, you are your best friend. How you navigate your thought pattern, how focused you are on your priorities makes a lot of difference. And so we are kind of juggling between India and America through our thoughts as well as what we are talking right now. So Jagjeet, I take you back to India, and the issue about migrant laborers is so big, is so huge, which we would have probably not imagined before this COVID-19 hit us. Now that from one state to another they are trying to go, they are facing so much hardships, and the stories are unbelievable. One which was further shared by Ivanka Trump, related to a 15-year-old girl carrying her father to hundreds of miles.
On a cycle, bicycle.
Right, right. So, what do you think overall handling of this issue, as well as the future? Because once things starts opening up, you won't have required labor at the place where they were working and were also helping in economic growth.
See, one has to understand what led the migrant laborers to move back to their homes. See, this is a time of cultivation when crops are cut. So, what is the normal routine in a life of a person, say, for example, from Bihar who is working in Rajasthan? During this time, he comes back home, he harvests the fields and stores the cut product for the next whole year for his family, and then after a month he returns back to from Bihar to Rajasthan, just an example, so that he may continue his earning there. This is a normal time for him to come back. Corona came in the middle without asking whether you have come back from home. It's natural, it just came in, which clashed with this timing of migrant laborers coming in, and you had a lockdown during this period of time when they were not allowed. So you have to understand what difficulties these migrant laborers faced. Number one, They were not allowed to go back home, so the harvesting could not be done by them, which would have left the family with food and fodder for one whole year, the next coming season. That got, you know, stuck out in the middle. And these laborers were out of their jobs for the coming season, in, you know, back in where they were working. Now, I feel personally it was job of the state government in various states where these migrant laborers were, whether they are in Maharashtra, whether they are in Rajasthan, or whether they are in Madhya Pradesh, from whom, say, wherever they were, it was job of their state governments to safeguard their living. Now they were out of job. Somehow or the other, the state government had to support them. You are The state is enjoying the benefits from these migrant laborers for the whole year, and now when they are in a crisis, the state governments, yes, they should have asked the help from the federal government, but it was primarily the job of the state governments wherever these laborers were stuck to provide them with facilities so that they could retain their home and, you know, proceed. And then if needed, see, once the hardship stopped, once they stopped working and they're earning the daily bread, then they wanted to go back home. If they had been provided with all the benefits there itself by the local state governments, they may not have thought of going back home. May not. And
I think you made a very good point, but I'll come back to you. Nilimaji, the way Jagjit Singh ji analyzed, he's putting or fixing the responsibility on state governments. Partly true, but more important, I think, as a labor, if I'm working in India, for me it doesn't matter whether it is state government or central government. For me, what is more important is that there should have been a proper coordination uh, in terms of communication as well as distribution of resources between state and central government. So on that front, how do you see the success of central government in working with different state governments, in particular with specific reference to the problem of migrant laborers?
Well, there have been a lot of unpredictable factors and unimaginable time limits that had to be set. As far as the central government is concerned, I think the whole world has recognized Mr. Modi for taking an immediate action in locking down the entire country, as well as the borders. He made sure that the first and most prioritized safety measure is in place. So once that was taken, and I must give an applaud to the entire humanity in India as well as elsewhere, that they abided by what the guidelines were placed by their governments, respective governments. Having said that, migrant laborers are used to going back and forth and crossing state borders. Okay, they work in one state, they live in one state. Okay, so to have an immediate combined effort by the state governments to start giving packages to people on a long-term basis, I think that became a challenge. As far as the central government was concerned, central government did what they could for the first few weeks that they could manage, and then there was a transition that should have happened, which I think was not a very easy step to take. And at this point, instead of having frustrated members of our society, something has to come up. And once the easing is done, people will slowly get back to their normal lives.
Absolutely.
And we are hoping and praying that this difficult time tides by.
So now talking about the difficult times, and there were several social media posts showing the problems and miseries of migrant laborers. Anything that you found which kind of struck you very unusual, Jagjit?
the unusual thing which I saw was a documentary by Mr. Rahul Gandhi talking to the immigrant community and then coming up to the point that shouldn't the central government have paid you? Well, I personally feel, I'm a Congress person also. I personally feel this was a time for the Congress to rise up to the occasion and try and help the migrant community as much as possible from their own coffers, and not to put the blame on the central government or Mr. Modi, whosoever it may be. You were in ruling capacity in Rajasthan. You are part of the ruling capacity in Maharashtra and other states. See, what happens is there was a very beautiful post by somebody I saw today. You know, had that migrant labor been a voter of, say, Rajasthan, and who is belongs to Bihar, had he been a voter, like for example, one India, one vote, and he could cast his vote in Rajasthan because he's working there. Had it been that, he would not have faced any problem in Rajasthan because he has a vote, the government would have taken care of him. But because he did not have a vote in Rajasthan, but his vote is back in Bihar, he is not being taken care of by the local government there, and he is left at lurch. So, something of that kind has to come forward, as far as legislation or policy making is concerned, so that in future, this thing will have to be, cut at the nib, and people who are living in a particular state should have a voting right in that particular state. And that will solve the problem in future.
I think what you have highlighted is a very acute problem of a democratic system where your concern is swayed by potential votes that you will get, which results into vote banks, which also
Yeah, that is true, which happens.
with the future of people as well as with the nation. But as we are out of time, I will just request both of you to share one lesson briefly that this particular phase has taught you individually, and that which you feel society at large should also appreciate. Nilimaji.
I think one of the major messages that we have here is, as far as any disease is concerned, prevention is the cure. And that is the key. And we have learned many lessons during this time, and personal hygiene as well as hygiene in all public places is paramount. I would just say one more thing, if you allow me to. Besides any funding from the government, there have been steps taken by individuals who have raised a lot of money and awareness for the society and people who need it. Whether it is food, whether it is clothing, whether it is PPE or whatever, everybody has stepped up to the plate. And I don't think this is a time where the governments need to think in terms of vote. They have to think in terms of helping. Thank you.
Absolutely. And one lesson, briefly, Jagjit Singh ji, that this period has taught you.
Follow the guidelines by the government, because somehow or the other, as individuals, we may think we are, more intelligent or whatever, but the government has a think tank which decides. Like, for example, if they want you to wear a mask, do wear a mask. If they want you to do social, distancing, please do so, because it is the right thing to do. And yes, when they asked you that 10 people, up to 10 people can gather in your backyard, I followed. Yesterday, I had a small gathering of 6 to 7 people in my backyard with a little bit of barbecue. It was interesting, fun to see people one to one.
Yeah, I appreciate.
Even though at a 6 feet distance.
Yeah, we missed it, but I think now we'll miss talking to you for now in this show. Nilimaji, such a pleasure that you could join, and thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jagjit Singh ji, and you look very good in your backyard, recollecting your barbecue.
Yesterday food.
So
thank you, ITV. Thank you, Parik Media. Thank you, Ashok.
Indian American community spirit is vibrant, and we are there to support each other and help each other. That also became evident in this period. People, many of them collectively, did their best to help each other and support. I cannot have more and more words of thanks for each and every one of you, as well as for Nilimaji and Jagjit Singh ji, with lots and lots of good wishes. Take care, and all the good things that needs to be observed must be observed. This is Ashok Vyas.
Thank you.
Thank you.